白米に落ち着くよね最終的に
SOBA あんたもやろうか
So anytime you see Shoto actually eating his soba, it's always cold soba noodles, which kind of throws me off because he only uses his ice part of his abilities and not his hot side of his abilities, except for that one time.
ありがとな
Now to start off, I'm going to be making the actual dipping sauce, and for this, I'm using my blend of teriyaki sauce, or you can use 2 ounces of soy sauce, 2 ounces of mirin, 2 ounces of rice vinegar, and 2 ounces of sake. I'm also going to be adding in an equal part of water to this just to thin it out, and then I have some cold brew konbu. I actually read this in another book, and I thought it was super interesting, so I decided to try to use this. This konbu had been soaking for about 2 days to make this cold brew konbu. You'll need about 1 cup, and then I'm going to go ahead and add in about 2 cups worth of bonito flakes or fish flakes. We'll bring you guys over to the stove, and we're going to start heating this up just to a gentle simmer. And look, Gandalf heard us open the fish flake bag, and now he's here for his feeding. Now again, we're going to bring this up to just a gentle simmer, and then we're going to let this steep for about 20 to 30 minutes afterwards. Once you start seeing it to bubble, just go ahead and shut it off. After those 20-30 minutes of steeping over the stove, go ahead and drain this out completely. I like to press this with chopsticks so you get all that good out of the fish flakes because it does absorb some of that liquid. Now I'm also going to hit this with a little bit of yuzu juice just to kind of, bring up that sourness, that really fresh taste to it. You can also use lemon juice for this, but just a splash. Go ahead and bring it together with your chopsticks and you're pretty much done. Now onto the soba, and for this we obviously need some buckwheat flour. For this flour I'm using Bob's Red Mills, but I will say it's not as finely ground as I think it should be, but we're going to go ahead and roll with this. Make sure you find your sous chef cliffhanging literally from the cabinets once again because he thinks you have fish flakes. Now we're going to add in 350 grams worth of your buckwheat flour into a large bowl, followed by about 125 grams worth of all-purpose flour. Now go ahead and stir this together with your hands just to make sure that you kind of get those 2 flours incorporated before we start adding in water. I'm starting off with 130 grams worth of water at first just to try to get the dough forming. We are going to need a second portion worth of that water right after this. You want to mix this together until you start getting small clumps worth of flour before you really start forming it into dough. Once you have those clumps, we're going to add in another 100 grams worth of water and finally start bringing this together until it starts forming into a nice ball of dough. Now remember, buckwheat doesn't actually have any gluten, or at least a tremendous amount of gluten in it, so you're really only working with the gluten in the all-purpose flour. This means that buckwheat flour actually is very temperamental, and there's a wonderful video on how to make it down below. Now after letting this rest for about 20 to 30 minutes, I don't let it rest too long because it is buckwheat, and again, there isn't much gluten for it to rest, but I like rolling this out just a little bit so that way I can actually portion it to fit into my pasta roller. Go ahead and portion this out to however big you need. I'm portioning this into quarter-size pieces, and then I'm going to go ahead and actually roll this out just a little bit more so it does fit into that pasta roller. Now that you're ready to go, you can see how terribly this goes through the pasta roller, but don't worry, we're going to put this back together just a little bit and try it again because that's all you can do, right? Try again, and look at that, it kind of came through, not too bad. Now I did roll it again through at the thinnest setting the second time to start getting this ready to actually put through the spaghetti cutter to start making the noodles. Now putting it through the spaghetti cutter was a little tricky because I had to play with the speed. As you can see, some of it did fall apart coming through because I don't know if it was high enough or slow enough, so I gave this a couple of passes until I started to actually form some decent looking soba noodles. The third time I ran this through, I did the same thing, but I didn't use as much flour because I thought it was drying it out, and it seemed to actually produce a little bit of a soba noodle. These came out halfway decent, but I felt like they were a little fragile, so I went ahead and started to cook these right away. So now you do need your water at a rolling boil, and unfortunately mine does cool down pretty easily, so I go ahead and drop just a small portion of my soba and immediately throw the lid back on top to get it boiling again. You want these boiling the entire time so the soba noodles cook really nicely, but just keep an eye on it because this will boil over on you, and just pay attention to it. After about 2 minutes of cooking, we want to strain these right away and shock them in ice water. Paul, just do this over the sink. What are you trying to do? After you remove all the hot water from this and strain them, dunk these into your ice water and make sure they cool down really quickly. Alternatively, you can run these under really cold water over the sink to the same effect. Now, I like to let these drain for a little bit, but that didn't really matter because look at what happened to my noodles after cooking. They kind of just fell apart, wasn't super happy with them, and yeah, we're gonna do this again. Okay, here we go. For this, I'm using about 75 grams worth of buckwheat, 50 grams worth of all-purpose flour, and we're eyeballing the water on this. I want to make sure I add enough liquid to start forming this into my pasta dough. This was totally by feel, and I just wanted to try to create a nice tacky dough. I was able to actually form this relatively quickly, and we did let this rest for, again, about 20 to 30 minutes before we started to roll this out. We're doing the same process, trying to cut it down to fit through our pasta roller, but I didn't roll it out to the thinnest setting this time. I actually rolled it out to about a number 6 on my roller, which is about like a medium thin setting, if that makes any kind of sense. The reason for this is because I felt like the other noodles were a little bit too thin, which may have caused breakage, but you can see that these came through really, really nicely. I was super proud of how this second batch came up, and I just let it roll out the entire long sheet, and they came out beautifully. Look at that. Look at those long strands of beautiful buckwheat soba. Now, once your noodles are rolled out, we're going to go ahead and start boiling these right away. And this time I'm going to be using a wok because it's a little bit of a bigger surface to start cooking these. Go ahead and dump your soba directly into your boiling water, kind of poke them around a little bit. And we're going to again be cooking these for about 2 to 3 minutes, just until they're nice and cooked. Give one a taste. And once they're done, pop these directly into your ice bath once again to get them cooling down, because we want cold soba and we want the cooking process to stop. After letting them soak for about 2 to 3 minutes as well, these should be ready to go, and we do want to strain these completely. Once they're strained, we can start plating up. Now, normally they would be plated on somewhat of a bamboo slotted mat, so that way some of the excess liquid leaks through, but we just got a plate. Go ahead and garnish this with a little bit of green onion, followed by a little dash of your sauce on the side, and then finish it off with just a sprinkle of nori or seaweed if you have it, a little fresh grated ginger on the side because it's delicious with this. And there it is, guys, soba for Shoto, the cold stuff, because he doesn't like hot food. Now, before we dive into these noodles, I want to show you the ones that we made the first time. So this was the first batch of noodles we made, and you can see it kind of just fell apart. And I think a big reason why this fell apart is because the flour that I'm using isn't ground really fine enough to use just as a primary source for your noodles. It tastes really nice, but I also think I rolled it too thin for my pasta roller. So after kind of learning from those mistakes and having it all over my hands, we made this second batch that came out so much better, and to be honest, I just winged it. I just kind of eyeballed everything. We did measure out some of the flours, but we didn't measure out the water. The water was something that I just kind of went with by feel to try to get a nice pasta dough out of it. And I think it came out pretty great. So let's just eat this bad boy. So normally you would serve this on kind of a, I don't know the name of it, but it's basically a strained plate. So that way the soba noodles themselves, if they have been cooked and shocked immediately, won't really carry a lot of liquid. But I did strain these for a significant amount of time. You can see how much better these noodles look. Like you have this nice little pull to them, and you get a significant amount. This is kind of what you're looking for. And we're gonna dip this right into our broth. Delicious. Oh my God. That broth, I'm telling you, with that yuzu juice, makes such a big difference in the flavor. Now we'll try it with some ginger on here. Oh yes. Oh, this is delightful. I've been working on these noodles for a couple of hours, and I'm really happy that they turned out. Probably one of my favorite things to have in the summertime. I've honestly never made soba noodles until this video, and going through that little trial at the beginning and trying to really figure it out makes all the difference. So if you fail the first time, don't be discouraged. Try it again, maybe with a different formula, a different flour, a different recipe, whatever the case is. Maybe just eyeball it like I did. Just like you should eyeball the Patreon down below where you can support the channel directly. My name is CHEFPK. Get subscribed, and remember, keep playing with your food, and then you'll figure out how to actually make soba noodles. So can't really walk off with this, but the sauce is still there, so I'm gonna have to come back, but I'm leaving. Bye guys.